Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and every week I interview somebody who has overcome a life-controlling issue with God's help. And this week, my guest is Brittany. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Brittany, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I released my book and Mommy Drunkest, so I became an author, which was always a dream of mine. And it's allowing me to do and help a lot of people that I can relate to. I'm a mother of 4 children, and so that keeps me busy most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably don't have a lot of free time for hobbies and whatnot, but that's awesome. Well, you mentioned your book, so I wanted to show it here. It's called Mommy Drunkest: How Losing My Little Angels Freed Me of My Demons. And I want to let the audience know I messaged Brittany and I said I'd love to have you as a guest. She said, I'll send you my book. It'll be there, in about a week. And so I went and I downloaded it and I read it 2 days. So I read the book before it even got here, but it's just so powerful. And I love it because you're so real, you're so transparent. I mean, you share some very ugly parts of your life, and I really think that that's going to help people. So thank you for being gut-wrenchingly honest, Brittany. It makes your book so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into your story. So, one of the things that you mentioned early on in your book, and unfortunately, this is a testimony that I'm hearing time and time again, is that you suffered some abuse and trauma at a young age. I mean, we're talking about 3 years old, and it left you wounded emotionally, I believe, and that led to choices down the road. So, without going into too much detail, would you share kind of how those early experiences as a young child affected you?
Yeah, my earliest memory of that happening.
Mm.
Um, and for me, for a long time, I was like, geez, how do I remember something? Because a lot of people don't. How do you remember something happening when you were 3? But when it's something that's traumatic and very, I don't know, eye-opening, I remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened throughout my childhood. It was usually older neighborhood boys, and it happened while I was living. I was born in Utah and I moved to California when I was 5, and it continued happening there.
Mm.
So I was like, it's me.
Mm.
I've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is my fault because I'm in a totally different location and it's still continuing. So it made me very closed off in a way, and it almost kind of made a personality split in me because I was um, hurt, but I tried to portray this other happy go
Mm.
lucky child to the outside world, and it wasn't that. It made me very self-conscious, and it made me question my worth.
Mm.
uh, it just it really ruled the trajectory of what was to come in my life.
Wow. Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But it's like the enemy causes the situation, and then he pours salt in the wound by making you think it's your fault, right?
Mhm.
And a child doesn't really have the ability to process through these things. And I work with women who have life controlling issues, and this is the story time and time again. But what they're finding is that if the abuse happened at the age of 3, then you get emotionally stuck at the age of 3. So you could even be an adult who is a 3-year-old emotionally, and then we wonder why we make some of the decisions that we do. And until God has the opportunity to get in there and heal that inner child, these behaviors are going to continue.
Yeah, I can understand, totally see why they find that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this happened at a young age, and then you grew up and you had an encounter with God. You got baptized when you were 8, and it sounds like your dad baptized you. And tell us a little bit about that experience.
That was a day. That was a wonderful memory for me in my childhood. Because I had a rough childhood, but I had good things too, you know. And I just remember when he was doing the blessing, well, and the baptism, I just felt cleansed and clean and just, pure, because with all that had happened before, I kept that a secret, and I thought that I was dirty and that I was bad. And so when that happened, I felt like clean and just this inner peace that you just can't explain, this warmth, total connectivity to God and to Jesus and to the Holy Spirit. And it is one of my favorite childhood memories.
That's awesome. It sounds like when you were about 13, you began drinking alcohol and smoking pot. And what did these substances do for you? How did they make you feel?
It was a altered version of that. It was not nearly in comparison to that loving, pure feeling, but in a time when I like needed it, like if I wanted to get out of my headspace, it gave me that like immediately. And so it was just an escape. It was just
Sure.
that lightness. In one of the chapters, I say lightness by way of liquid. Like I just didn't have to think anymore. Like this is awesome. Like I don't have to even, my brain is stopping for just,
Yeah.
however long, just to make me just go somewhere else. And that's all I wanted, was to get away from myself.
Sure. I think that's a common thing that people are dealing with. And that's why the substance abuse continues. And again, until that space is healed with God, quitting those substances isn't necessarily going to be the answer. It's what's feeding the desire to use those substances, right? But as you were talking, Brittany, I was just thinking about the Holy Spirit and how he is a comforter. He gives us that warmth, that comfort that's real. And I've got to be honest with you, there have been some times where I just feel the presence of God so strongly that it feels like I'm drunk. I mean, it just is so overpowering, and it's a great feeling, to just sense him so strongly. But we know that the enemy has something fake for everything real God has, right? So the enemy will try to recreate that same feeling through substances. So instead of like being comforted and having that warm feeling with God or the Holy Spirit, I have the warm feeling with alcohol,
And
right?
it's at,
What's that?
yeah, at my disposal. The enemy makes it
Right.
available.
Oh, for
Right here.
sure.
That's what so many addicts want. We want our instant
Yes.
gratification, instant relief. We don't want to have to work for it,
Okay.
and you know what I mean, by going the right way about it. We want
Right.
it there.
That's good. That's good. That's a really good point. Okay, so this kind of continues, and you wrote in the book that at the age of 22, you were a full-blown alcoholic, and you were using cocaine, and you were dealing with suicidal thoughts for years.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then enter the man who eventually became your husband. You met
Yes.
him, and it sounds like you had kind of a tumultuous relationship, um, some abuse, some substance abuse. Just kind of give us a picture of what life was like when you were together.
Okay. Yeah. I'm at a bar, and he is also an addict and an alcoholic. So that right away just boop, made us click.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I met him, I was already an alcoholic. I was doing a lot of cocaine, and he didn't question. I had a lot of people in my life being like, Brittany, you like, this is kind of a problem, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to feed my desire more, but he was right there with me, just like
Okay.
never complained, never, gave me crap for it. Cause I had dated people before and they were like I was a little too much, for
Okay.
them. And so he just kind of accepted that. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is awesome. And he's not giving me any trouble. And
Right.
because even my friends, my first 12-step meeting, I was 18 years old that I had gone
Wow.
to. Yeah. So people knew, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew. I just didn't care.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I didn't care because, like you had said before, um, suicide was something that was in my mind a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
even from a very young age, like early teens, and I always thought, I was like, that's the ultimate escape,
Mm-hmm.
you know, well, from this life.
Right.
Um, and so instead of, I didn't want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because I had family members, both of my uncles had committed suicide. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really want to do that. So that's kind of also when I turned more to the escape of drugs and alcohol. I was like, okay, I'm
Okay.
going to think this way. Um, but in fact, I was just slowly killing myself.
Hmm.
Does that make
Okay.
sense? But
Yes.
I'll go to chat. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so with him and I, we did a lot of drinking, and I just thought he was the answer to, he was going to save me, and he was going, even though he was in the same spot I was, but
Right.
leaving California and moving to the Midwest with him. And I was like, this is my solution. I'm going to stop doing cocaine. I'm going to be happy because I'm getting away from all these people and all
Right.
this situation. So I moved across the United States with him, and it was okay for a while. There were lots of red flags that I
Mm-hmm.
just did not want to see. So I didn't see them.
Right.
And um, it from the beginning, it was the verbal abuse was always kind of there, the emotional, and the first time he hit me, yeah, I went to a party and I had actually done cocaine there. So I ended up doing some in the Midwest too. But he came and picked me up and he punched me in the eye in the
Mm-hmm.
car. And I don't write about that in the book, that particular situation. But I remember sitting in the passenger seat, just like, what just happened here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just, I almost like went out of myself. Like, did he really just do this? And it scared the crap out of me. And I remember having a conscious thought at that time, like, maybe I need to rethink this. Like, maybe I need to get out of this. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, um, because I didn't think I was, I deserved all the bad stuff that happened to me in my life. That was my
Right.
belief.
Right. That's interesting. I was wondering about that, that if you had that early abuse and it kept happening, then you would think you're the problem instead of somebody else. Um, so you said something that kind of got my attention. You said that you expected him to save you, right? So he's got a drinking problem, he's got an addiction problem, but he's going to be my savior. And I don't mean to laugh, but I think of just different scenarios in my own life, that I was always like going to go fix everybody. I gravitated toward men who needed fixing in my mind, but I needed fixing. Like I was in no position to help anybody. I couldn't help myself. And of course, I needed God, but I didn't see that at the time. So we need to understand that even the best people, even people who seem to have their stuff together, can't fix people. We need God.
Oh, totally.
But we're so deceived that we don't see that. One of the things you mentioned early on in the book, and I thought it was such a great analogy, Brittany, is you talked about building this fortress. And it sounds like you started to build the fortress as a child. And the fortress was designed to keep everybody out. Because you had suffered that abuse, you didn't want to let anybody in. You didn't want to leave yourself vulnerable to being abused again, to be hurt. But the problem when you build a fortress is, yeah, nobody can come in, but you also can't get out.
Yeah. I definitely, I still struggle with that today. um, keeping people at bay. I can feel like I can literally like feel when I'm like starting to block,
Right.
like pull or feelings off.
Mhm.
It's almost a physical feeling for me.
Mm.
And it's something that I've really tried to come to terms with, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's
Right.
okay to cry. It's okay to show your emotions, and it's
Mhm.
okay to let people in.
Mhm.
But I just had such a strong, it was just my defense mechanism, and it's when something happens so early and you start that so young, it's just so hard to break that down.
Right.
You know, I have a few years of sobriety, but it's still something I work on to this day. And I trapped myself in my own thinking, in my own mind. And that's just, anyone who's an addict knows that that's a dangerous, dangerous place to be,
Yeah.
especially alone. And really, it is only God that's going to lift that and to help.
Right.
Like, it made me see that I really do need to like let my guard down. I do need to free myself,
Yes.
because I completely trapped myself. And I almost, like, they talk about this void in recovery, and how we have this God-sized hole that like
Mm.
need to fill. And I was thinking about it actually last night, while I was thinking about coming on here, and I was like, I really um I fed into the negativity so much,
Right.
all just negative, 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 and I fed it, fed it, fed it, and then it festered, and it was like I created my own black hole. I
Mm.
created my own void as well.
Mhm.
And then I went and I tried to, and no amount of alcohol or drugs was gonna fill that.
Mm.
Um, so in essence, I was the creator of my problems, and then I tried to fill it with other stuff that was causing more problems
Yeah.
that only God can fill.
Yes. Amen. That's so true. Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, so you meet this man and it was good for a while and then, the abuse started. But at this point you have a couple of kids, you have two kids and you decide to change your location. And I think that this is something very common for not only people with addictions, but any type of life controlling issue, that what we think when we change our address, then everything's going to be okay, right? Because you know, everything around me is the problem. When I move into a new state, I'm leaving my problems behind, but the problem is that the problem is in the mirror.
Exactly.
And we don't realize that. And so we do, it's another form of escape, basically, right? We run and we think a change of scenery is going to magically be the solution. So you moved in with your parents at that point, or you did, and then I think your husband came later.
Yeah.
And maybe you were thinking that things were going to get better, but it sounds like it got worse because your mom was there. You had a built-in babysitter, and so you could basically use as much as you wanted to, and your kids would be okay.
Yeah. I have somebody to rely on to take care of them if I, seem to go a little bit overboard, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it was that enabling again of having my mom around. And it was also again being in that dynamic of like growing up with my parents too,
Mm-hmm.
because they argue and stuff sometimes. So it was just almost stepping back, you know what I mean, into
Right.
time, like with all of like those past incidences that happened
Mm-hmm.
that fed my addiction also. But yeah, my mom was there to pick up the pieces if I decided that I didn't, I wanted to really check out.
Right. Okay. So at this point, Brittany, and this is going to be a little bit hard to talk about, but you, as I said earlier, are very open and honest. You're very transparent with your story, and I really appreciate that about you. But you wrote that one day you had taken some pills and you started drinking, and you knew you had crossed the line. And you called a friend for help. She came over, and you had passed out with your two children in the bathtub.
Yeah, that was an eye opener for sure. I knew I had definitely crossed the line that
Mm-hmm.
time. And this particular friend had given me a book about a woman who suffered from alcoholism before, because I mean they could all see, they were trying to help me, like, here, read this book, maybe
Right.
it'll help and that. And I just always thought that I could handle it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I thought that I was like, well, if I, drink, like, I'll be fine. Like, everything's gonna be fine. Like,
Right.
you lie to yourself.
Yes.
And when I came to, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, that's really horrible.
Hmm.
Um, Two little kids in a bathtub. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong,
Hmm.
horribly wrong. And I mean, I think I even say this in my book. Like, I thank God because He was watching my children so much when I was in my addiction.
Hmm.
Like, I am so grateful that nothing tragic happened.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. It's really a miracle.
Amen. So at this point, people are trying to step up their efforts to help you, and they kind of encourage you to go into a detox center that would allow you to bring your kids, right?
Mm.
So you go there, and what happened?
I was mad. I was angry. I was intoxicated. Also, I was drunk when they took me, and that's never a good idea. At least for
Mhm.
me. Anytime I've been taken, because this was not. There's a few times, not a good idea to take an intoxicated person
Yeah.
to rehab. Um, I was just sitting there stewing and just really upset. And I had seen some other people that were in the facility, and one girl in particular, I think she was addicted to the meth. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I can't be in here like with her. Like, she's a crazy like meth head, like the things
Mhm.
we tell ourselves. It's like, look in the mirror, Brittany. Like, what are you? Like, what did you just
Right.
do?
Mhm.
But I was really upset that they wouldn't let us have cigarettes. Um, my mom had actually left, and I got taken to the room. And I remember we went to the cafeteria, and I was sitting there with my kids, and I was just like, I can't be here.
Mhm.
Like, I can't do this. My kids can't do this. I can't be here. This is just not happening. And I completely freaked out, and I called my mom to make her come back. I wasn't ready. And I lied and I manipulated and said I would do anything. I'll do anything. I'll stop. Just don't make me stay here.
Right.
You know, get me out of that situation right when I wanted it,
Yeah. It sounds like your mom didn't want to pick you up, but you knew how to say the right thing. So you mentioned the word manipulated her. Sometimes you would get ugly in the things you said to her. And let's talk a little bit about that, because it sounds to me, and I know you wrote in the book that your mom enabled you to do some things. Okay, so let's just talk about enabling, because I think it's a big problem. And you know, as a parent, you want to help your kid. And so there's help, there's enabling. It's really hard to know how to walk that line, right? Like, when am I helping? When am I enabling? So kind of talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, I believe that my mom enabled me out of her own guilt
Mm.
for things, and I knew that. So I knew to use guilt on her to get her to do things for me.
Right.
And she definitely wasn't helping me. She was helping me in the moment when I wanted something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she used to come pick me up from bars, and if I was drunk, she didn't want me to drive. She didn't want me to get a DUI. But I mean, sometimes, like, when you teach someone with no consequence, you can't learn with no consequences.
Right.
I never really had any horrible, horrible consequences at all until I
Mm-hmm.
got a bit older. And even then, being put in jail and stuff, I was still like, no, I still went out and did the same stuff anyways,
Right.
never had consequences for my actions. So I kept
Mm-hmm.
thinking my actions were okay. And there's this thing I have heard about enabling. It's like people can love people to death.
Mm.
You
Yes.
know, yes, like if you can love someone till they're dead, because I mean, that's hard for me too, because I almost feel like when my kids are older, I'm not sure, what do you want them out on the street, and then you worry,
Right.
well, they on the street, but they could also die right in your bedroom or in
Right.
their bed. your house, you know?
Mhm.
So enabling is hard. That
Yeah,
is a hard fine line because you do want to help, you do, but it's like, when does the help become hurt? You know,
right.
instead of helping, you're just hurting the person.
Sure.
And and like you saw said earlier about fixing people, I always thought I could fix people too. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, just if I help you enough, if I believe in you enough, if
Mhm.
I give you what you want right now and make you happy right now, eventually
Yeah.
the lights are on. And
Right.
it does not work that way.
Right. Well, you said something earlier, and it kind of it kind of made me think of a lot of different things, but you said you knew you needed help, but you just didn't care.
Mhm.
So having a bunch of people around you saying, Brittany, you need help. You need help. Here, go here. Like, you already know that. So if you don't care, how do you get someone to care? Right. And
Right.
that's kind of tricky.
It is. When I knew I was an alcoholic and I knew that something was wrong and I knew I needed help and I didn't care, I was extremely suicidal at
mm,
those points in time. Once I had children, I knew that was off the table, and I
mhm,
still knew I had a problem. I knew I needed help, but I was so scared.
mhm,
And like, so I just told myself, lying to yourself again, like, I don't
right.
care, like, I really have a problem, like, I'll be fine, everything's gonna be okay. I was scared to death of what my life would look like without drugs and alcohol.
Mhm,
It had just been such a huge part of everything that I could not fathom what it would be. It was so scary. Change
right.
is just so scary. And when you're so used to something and it's like your comfort, and like,
Mhm,
I used to call alcohol like my best friend.
right.
Like, how is that? Like, it's always there for me, when I need
Right.
it. It's one thing that's constant in my life, but it's
Mhm,
killing me.
mhm,
Um, that's just how we think. But um, for someone who does not care, I mean, that light has got to come on for them.
mhm,
Um, you can talk and talk and talk to somebody till you're blue in the face, but
mhm,
until that light comes on for them, and some people it takes not much, their
mhm.
rock bottom isn't much, and for some people they never get there.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think when we know that God cares, then we can start to care. But again, we don't always see that.
Right.
And whether or not we have a relationship with God, maybe we think, well, God doesn't even care. Nobody cares, not even God. And we know that that's not true, but we can believe a lot of lies. We can be in deep denial and stay stuck in our mess.
Exactly.
Okay. So you made these promises to your mom. She came and picked you up from the center. And did you follow through on those promises?
What do you think? I did go to a few meetings. I got better at hiding it.
Oh, okay.
What I
Interesting.
started doing. Yeah, I was very careful. I didn't drink much during the day, and if I knew I was going to be alone with my kids, I wouldn't go too far or take too
Right.
much. Became more cautious and careful and better at hiding it.
Okay.
I thought,
Mhm.
until you can't anymore,
Sure.
but I tried to stay on my best behavior for as long as I could until the next time
Okay.
that something blows up, because there's always that next time,
Sure. Sure.
But I tried to make her believe that I was trying to be better. Basically, was what I was trying to do, but I
So
wasn't.
you went to a couple token meetings, you showed up, you weren't really engaged, you weren't there to learn anything, or okay.
No,
Did it to appease her.
I remember being in a meeting like, these people have no lives. Like, how, like, what? They come
Yeah.
to me
Yep.
this, like, and it's so far from the truth.
Exactly.
So far from the truth.
Yes.
When you're in your addiction, you are just very just delusional. Just you only want to see what you want to see because you want to keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the frustrations for family members and friends around that person. You try to wake that person up and jolt them into reality, and it doesn't always work that way.
So,
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned in the book, Brittany, which I found really interesting, you said the word alcohol is said to come from the Arabic term al-kul, Al-Kul, which means body-eating spirit. It devours much more than the body. It can and will devour everything and anything as long as you will allow it to. And that's one thing that you actually did in your life. So it was destroying relationships. It was destroying you physically. It was hurting your children. The destruction was kind of never ending and just kind of snowballing, I think.
oh yeah. I mean, to me, alcohol is the devil in liquid form from my experience. I really had that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing going with me. My mom actually, she would look at me and she'd be like, you are the devil. She's like, your eyes just get, it's almost like I was like possessed in some way. Like it just made me just pure, just hatred and like madness was what it is. So when I had looked for it up, I knew I had to put that in the book because that was my experience with alcohol. I mean, it shifted my personality and who I really am into a completely different person.
Right.
It's kind of scary. And I've seen it. It's actually really scary. I've seen it in other people as well. Like it's just they don't even look like the same person anymore.
Wow.
Like yeah, and it led me down a really bad path, and I made some really bad decisions that only fed it for longer because I those decisions made me completely hate myself.
I don't really want to get into a debate on, whether people should drink or not. There are people who can have a glass of wine and be done. But you mentioned that as an alcoholic, you never just drank to have one drink. Your goal was to pass out. I mean, that was what was going to happen, right? It was going to get to that point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, yes. I drank to get drunk for sure. I drank to escape. But the thing with just one is like once I had the one, I couldn't stop. Like it wasn't like it was a conscious choice where I was like, I'm gonna just keep going. I had the one and I was like, another one sounds great.
Yeah.
And another one sounds great. And another one, it's like one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. For an alcoholic, one drink is horrible.
Right.
And I can't do it. And I've learned to accept that and thank God.
Yeah.
But some people can have just one.
Sure.
I can't.
Yeah. Okay. So your husband came to live with you with your parents, and you ended up having 2 more children. So we mentioned earlier in the show that you have 4 kids. So you had 2 more children, and you became extremely transparent in this section of the book, and my heart just broke for you because I could just see how much writing it hurt you. But you said that with your first 2 pregnancies, you didn't drink. You stopped drinking during that season, but with the last 2, you did. You didn't want to, but you just said, I could not stop.
Yeah. It's really hard for me because I was in such denial about that for so long. I mean, especially when it was happening, but even like after. And I just it's as a mom, we're supposed to be nurturing and loving, and I could not.
Yeah, you popped out there, but
Okay.
if you could just repeat that because it was kind of breaking up. I don't know what happened there, but just talking about how hard it was as a mom to continue to do something that you know wasn't good for your unborn children.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking, and there was a part of me, that like knew, and I'm like, I can't, what am I doing? I can't do this. And then there was another part of me that just, I couldn't stop. And I even remember thinking or telling myself, I'm like, well, if I do try to stop like completely cold turkey, I could have major withdrawal syndrome, like something could happen to the baby that way. You know what I mean? I was trying
Mhm.
to like fit like why this was, what it was, but I thought that I would take this to the grave. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd ever put that in a book or talk about it openly, because it was so shameful. And I was just, I couldn't believe what a piece of crap I was, is how I saw it.
Mhm.
And I prayed so much to those pregnancies that it was just a really, it was a difficult, difficult time,
Yeah.
because I was happy in ways that I was pregnant, but then what I was doing was just so horrible.
Mhm.
That was one of the worst times, and yeah, in my life, like one of the most lonely, just knowing that what I was doing and I couldn't stop. Um, the powerlessness in that, and just, I never thought I would be able to forgive myself for that.
Thank you for sharing that,
But
Brittany, and writing about it too. What?
yeah, and it's not as it's more common than people think. And that's why I decided, once I got into recovery, I heard stories. I thought I was the only one, I thought I was
Right.
the only one on the planet that was demented enough to actually do something like this. And when you get into recovery, you learn that you're not alone. And I
Mm.
knew that if I shared this, and like something that was just so horrible, for, I don't know, a horrible time in my life that I felt such guilt over, with somebody else who had done it, the same thing, and felt the same way, maybe they would be able to slowly forgive themselves and be
Right.
healed from that.
Amen. That's why it's so important to talk about these things, and that's why we're here. So thank you again for sharing that. So you have 4 children, and it sounds like the violence in the home is escalating. At one point, you got arrested, and you wrote that your blood alcohol level was 4.8, which is like they said you should be dead or in a coma, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was aware. I remember that night very well. Um, and I wasn't passed out or anything. I was still, but that's what happens with alcohol. I was that alcoholic, they in
Mm-hmm.
recovery. I'm, it slipped from me, but a true alcoholic is what they say in recovery. But it's progressive.
Mm.
Like, so my body became so used to the alcohol and how much I was putting it in, because, and I was probably like 90, maybe 100 pounds at that time too.
Mm-hmm.
But my body had just gotten so used to it that that level didn't kill me like it would somebody else,
Wow.
which is scary. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Just
very.
your body got used to it, but my body was also dependent on it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my body depended on alcohol to function.
So one day you were with your kids. You weren't drinking on that particular day. Sounds like you were playing outside or the kids were playing outside, and you saw a kaleidoscope of colors and passed out. Tell us what happened on that day.
Yeah, I was outside with kids. I had no alcohol. I didn't have anything to drink that day. I didn't take any pills. And I remember freaking out about that, because I'm like, how am I going to get through this day? Like, how am I, my anxiety was just through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm outside watching them, and yeah, I'm looking into the yard, and I'm just like, that's so odd. And it's just like these circles where my pupils are. And I wrote in the book too, it reminded me of being on like shrooms or something, like some, like some, what, I can't find the word right.
Psychedelics.
Yeah. Um, and all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm in my bed in my house, and
Mm.
um, my husband is waking me up, and he's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Your lip." And I was like, "What?" And I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself and I bit my own lip. I didn't know he was asking me questions about what day it was and who the president was, and like I didn't know what day it was. I knew the president, but I went to the doctor and they said it was a seizure. It was withdrawal because I hadn't drinking that day, so I had a seizure from alcohol
Wow.
withdrawal.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 30,
Okay.
I think, at that
So
time.
at this point, you go to your doctor and your doctor knew you had a drinking problem, right?
Right.
And you were presented with antabuse. You wrote that your husband came home and set a bottle of vodka down and the antabuse down and asked you to make a choice.
Yeah. He didn't so much as ask me to make a choice, but he definitely presented the
Presented, sure.
and yeah, I chose vodka.
Mhm.
Before that, I had gone about a week without drinking because after the seizure, I had tests done, and my liver was not doing so great. And actually, I was 31 at this time, and my doctor told me, he's like, "Brittany, if you seriously don't stop, like, you will be lucky to see 40."
Mm,
And I just remember bawling, and because you hear those stories about people who die so young,
yeah.
you know, from their alcoholism or drug use, and
Mhm.
I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot be one of those people." I can't. Like, that is just the saddest thing ever, and it scared me. That thought for a week,
Mhm. Wow.
and so I had the vodka in front of me, and then it was just, whoop, like it just slipped out of my mind. Like, it's just weird how that happens in addiction. Like, something so devastating. Someone can tell you, "Hey, you might not live. You may
Mhm.
maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe," um, but you still decide to go and
Right.
drink.
Yeah. Do you not believe that prognosis, or you just don't care, or it's just too much for you to go into recovery?
I did care, but then it was like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like this voice, just your lying addiction voice saying, "It's not that big of a deal. You'll be okay.
Mhm.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what makes you feel okay right now."
Mhm.
And it was just, for me, I remember being given that choice, and I was just like, I want to drink.
Yeah.
Because the drink, that prognosis was like, I wanted to escape that. I
Right.
didn't want to that. I didn't want that to be my life or my
Mhm.
reality. So I'm
Right.
going to do what I know how to do, and I'm going to cope how I know how to cope. And this is the only way I know how to do it. So this is the easy way out, and this is what
Mhm.
I'm going to do. That was basically my thinking then.
Right. Well, that was the plan, but God had a different plan,
Yes.
and it came in a package that didn't look so pretty, let's say. Um, but you wrote, the end came, but not the death of your body. You hit rock bottom and you experienced a fate worse than death. So the fate worse than death was having your children taken from you.
Yes. So yeah, and that's, like I said, my husband is an alcoholic too, and we would get to drinking, and we had a lot of run-ins with the police
Mhm.
before with our behavior in that regard. And this last time, we got into it. We were fighting, and someone decided to call the cops, and we were both pretty intoxicated, and it was just almost like, okay, guys, like, this is it. We've had it. And for whatever reason, um, he told the police that there was no one the kids could go to, and I don't know why, because I was outside and already taken. But so the state got involved, And that day was just really horrible. I had a neighbor who actually told me that she was outside watching it, because I don't remember I remember bits and pieces of it, but
Mm.
that I remember trying to get out of the police car. I did, getting to that little window. I do remember that, but she said that I was on the grass crying, like trying to like get my youngest, like to give her a hug. I didn't want to like leave them. And um but that day was horrible. I was just completely devastated, and but it was God's way. I mean, he knew that I needed something big, something that I loved more than alcohol, really, because he knows I love my
Right.
children more than I loved alcohol.
Yeah.
I was the one in the way of that. So it had to be something drastic and big for me to finally kind of start to come to my senses.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned this several times and it happened to me, so I know the story well, but the idea that God sends you a pebble, and then it blink and it's like, oh, what was that? Oh, I can ignore that. Then you get a stone and that kind of rattles you a little bit. And eventually we just keep ignoring the warning signs until we get the boulder treatment. And if you can survive the boulder treatment, it is the thing that wakes you up, and it is incredibly painful, but it is
Yeah.
necessary. And this morning I was doing my devotions, and I came across this in Psalm 119, verses 71 and 72. And this is the Passion Translation. And it says this: "The punishment you brought me through was the best thing that could have happened to me, for it taught me your ways. The words you speak to me are worth more than all the riches and wealth in the whole world." And I think that in the moment, it's so incredibly awful, you don't think you can survive it. You really don't. It is so crushing. But if that's what it takes to get you to wake up and to start seeking God, you start caring, right? You start engaging, you start wanting to move forward. Because now at this point, you're not fighting for yourself or just yourself, you're fighting for those babies.
Right. Exactly. I love reading. It was definitely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I even say in my book, I thought it was like the worst curse that there could be. But once I was kind of away from the drugs and alcohol, I could see clearly, and it was like my biggest blessing. Um, that happening um, saved saved my life,
Mm-hmm.
um, in so many ways, because people had told me for years that my kids would get taken, and I just didn't believe it, because nothing bad's gonna happen to me because I'm invincible.
Right.
When you're in your addiction, I'm fine. Like everything's hunky dory. It's just
Yeah.
all a lot of deception.
Right.
And that was definitely one of the hardest times of my life, and one of the most shameful too. I mean, I never
Yeah.
thought I would do an interview. Oh yes, my children were taken from me. It's
Right.
it's embarrassing. It's humiliating,
Mm.
but it's humbling.
There you
And
go.
I needed that, and God
Yes.
knew that.
Well, when we're in our sin, we're so full of pride, right? We believe all these lies. It's never going to happen to me. It'll be okay. I can handle it. You even wrote that you had a relationship with God, but the problem is you thought you knew more than he did. And I had to laugh because I can relate to that. Sometimes I think that I know more than God, but he knows what he's doing. And we pray for change. And sometimes again, that package, that present, that gift looks a lot different than what we expected. But God is so amazing, and it was the wake up call that you needed. I mean, you would think that basically a death sentence would be a wake up call, but you kind of were like, no, it'll be fine. That won't happen. But when you got your kids taken away, that was it. And you said that you and your husband kind of exchanged a look between you, like kind of maybe, what have we done?
Yeah,
I
what?
imagine I can't imagine what that look would feel like.
It was just, yeah, like, really? Like, are we here? It was just almost like that thing, like, we know, like, deep down,
Hmm.
there's a core part of you somewhere that does know the truth, even when you're out here, lying to yourself. And
Yeah.
it was just like, we just continue doing this. And why? Like, what were we thinking? Why did we think we could get away with so much for
Mm.
so long?
Yeah.
Because, and it might be because of, again, the consequences, and I didn't get a lot of consequences until then.
Right.
That was like the ultimate
Yeah.
consequence for me.
Yes. You said something that really tugged at my heart. You said the fear and confusion that your children must have experienced during this time makes me sick down to my soul, because they don't understand, why mommy and daddy are getting taken away, and then you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I spent my being a mom was always something that I knew would happen.
Mhm.
And before I became a mom, I was like, I'm going to protect my children from everything, which I mean isn't realistic, but I was
Right.
going to protect them from what happened to me.
Yes.
And I don't want them to go through trauma and all of this stuff. And I say in the book, like, I protected them from those things, but
Mhm.
I brought on a whole other slew of stuff, onto them, because my trauma wasn't healed. It still infested my life, and
Mhm.
it still was doing things that was, causing me to make horrible decisions, and then it was thrown onto them.
Yeah.
So my unhealed trauma was just, they got it too.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, that's still hard for me. Just the total confusion of what's going on. And it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Right.
That's what's so sad. Um, I mean, I've been through it, and it's just, and some women will get better, like me, but there are some women who just can't deal with that pain and that guilt, and they continue on down,
Right.
the path of sin.
Yeah. Well, when we're faced with pain, and pain, it can be a gift because it teaches us a lot, right? I mean,
Yes.
I use a simple illustration with somebody yesterday, that your mom tells you not to touch the stove because it's hot. You don't listen, you go touch the stove and you burn your finger. That pain tells you something. I'm not going to touch the stove again. I learned a lesson, right? And that pain can be a lesson of, wow, I never want this to happen again. But like you said, some people are so overwhelmed with the pain, they continue into the very thing that brought it.
Exactly. I did that for a very, very long time. So I understand why people do it and how it's
Hmm.
done. I just thank God that for whatever reason, that time, that place was when I finally was like, okay.
Okay.
'Cause
So your kids
honestly,
are, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say that after I gotten arrested that night and they were taken, I went back home. I got bailed out at like 2 in the morning. I went back home, and that pain was so bad that I drank
Hmm.
again and cried. And I write about that in the book. I went home and just started drinking again because my kids were gone.
Right.
They took kids. Like, I can't believe they're not here.
Hmm.
And I go back to doing the same thing
Yeah,
that been taken away.
sure.
It's
So at what point, Brittany, did you say enough is enough? Like, I'm ready to make some real changes in my life.
I after that happened, I went to the hospital to detox, and I went to a rehab facility, and it wasn't necessarily my idea, but I went along with it this time. I
Mm-hmm.
think while I was there, I had a warrant out actually for my arrest, and I got arrested while in rehab.
Mm.
And so I went to jail, and it was the only time I'd ever been in jail sober. So it was really weird and really
Mm-hmm.
strange.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? Because normally I'm just like, so I was totally sober and aware. And there was this girl that came in, and she was just not, it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of crazy stuff.
Right.
And she was just yelling and saying a bunch of horrible things involving Jesus Christ. And she was taking the toilet water, and she was like almost like giving herself a baptism with it and washing her hands and her feet in it. And she stripped naked and was just, and I remember sitting there, and I heard this voice like, do you want that?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, no. And that was the first time that I saw that fork in the road, that I saw
Mm.
that I did have a choice, that
Wow.
I choose to go down the right path.
Wow.
And they did. And I went straight back to rehab after I got out.
So it sounds like God was kind of showing you, is this what you want your future to be?
Right. That's exactly what it was. That
Wow.
is exactly what it was. Like he
Interesting.
opportunity to see, is this what you want for yourself, because this is where it's gonna go.
Yeah. You mentioned the word choice, and I think a lot of times we want God to come in and fix everything, but we have choices to make. And the fork is in the road, which way are you going to go? And I've used this illustration before, but like whether you turn left or right at that fork in the road, neither one is going to be easy. Right? We're always kind of wanting the easy way out, the easy button. If you go down the road of I'm going to continue in my addiction, then your health is going to decline. You may even die, as the doctor has told you, and you're not going to get your kids back.
Right.
If you go to the right, on the other hand, recovery is not easy.
No.
You've got to feel the feelings. You've got to deal with your stuff. But that's the one where God is going to be leading you into wholeness, not perfection, because on this side of heaven, there is no perfection for people, but it's so much better that way. So that's interesting. One of the things you wrote, Brittany, is at this point, you have like, the light bulb go off. And you said you realize that you are your own problem as well as your own solution. So I'm not gonna stand up, but a standing ovation for that, because that's amazing. And it's like this two-sided coin, right? The realization that you are the problem is a very bitter pill to swallow. We don't want to hear that. We want to hear, the victim wants to hear, oh, well, it's your parents and it's your abuser and it's your ex and it's your this and your that and your fourth grade teacher who gave you a B and you should have gotten an A and all of this stuff. We just are waiting in our mess for everybody else to change, and then we'll be okay. And the reality is that we can't change anybody other than us, and we can partner with God to move into that transformation. So as hard as it is to hear that you are the problem, or to raise your hand and say, I'm the problem, the flip side of that coin is, but I'm also part of the solution. Like that is where you can take your power back and not just be a victim and let everything just happen to you, where you can say, yes, I'm the problem, but I'm also part of the solution.
Exactly that. Realizing that it's me and the problem was one of the greatest gifts recovery has given me.
Wow.
I know it sounds so weird, and like, because who wants to be the problem? It's
Right.
always else. Who wants that? But it also gives you so much power.
Yeah.
In a sense, because yeah, if I'm the problem, then I can also be the solution. And And when saying that, people are like, oh, so I just have to take all the brunt for everything, like everything's my fault.
Right.
No, that's not even how I had interpreted it.
Mm-hmm.
Had seen it was I'm the problem because even if I haven't done, let's say I'm perfect in this situation.
Right.
Let's say I haven't done anything wrong at all. But if my reaction to it is bad and not right, then yes, I am the problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm not choosing to see it for what it is, or I'm choosing to react to it wrong. So it
Right.
always comes back around to you, and I'm the one in control of my feelings and my reactions to other people. So
Right.
even if I'm doing anything wrong, but I'm reacting
Yeah.
in a negative way to somebody else's actions,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still the problem.
That's so good.
And
Yeah.
that's how I don't know, for me it was just very freeing because it gave me a sense of power because I felt for so long that I didn't have, I just went along with whatever was going on to me, and this was going to happen and continue to
Right.
happen. The fact that once you get sober, you can make choices, and I call it the gift of choice,
Yeah.
because in my addiction, I just didn't. My choice was to continue drinking and living that life, and that was it. And once I got sober, I was just like, I have so many things I can choose to do or not do,
Right.
and it really is. It is a gift.
It's huge. So the question then is, how do we get people to that point? How do we get people to see that they can take their power back by making those choices and not blaming everyone and everything? Because there were people in your life and as a young child that did things to you that are inexcusable, but they're not going to fix you. Like their actions, good or bad, are not going to rectify the situation, right? So I heard a quote one day and it said, where you are isn't all of your doing, but it's your responsibility as to how you're going to move forward in it, right? So this happened, it's awful, but now what am I going to do about it? Am I going to just continue in the mess and check out and numb myself? Or am I going to partner with God, give him that pain and help have him lead me out of this darkness? So the question is, how do we get people to that point? Is it something that we can do, or is it something that they just have to come to that realization themselves?
I think it's something we can help people get to.
Mhm.
Um, at a certain point, for me, it was really, I did um, join a 12-step program. So I did work the 12 steps.
Okay.
And for me, that helped a lot. Um, just, apologizing for wrongdoings, like realizing, you know what I mean, that I'm not in control of the time, that it's God's will and not mine. Just
Mm-hmm.
going through those steps really opened up my mind and changed my perception on things.
Right.
Um, so that helps. I know God plays a huge role in that. I think
Mm-hmm.
that we steer people to get to that realization. But so much of recovery is based solely on the person.
Yeah,
Like, you got to want it for yourself,
sure. It's
and
so true.
you have to. There's no amount that anyone can do um, to make anyone come to that. But I think that you can help lead people there.
Well,
And
yeah. Speaking of that, I one of the lines that I like to say is, um, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. However, you can make it thirsty.
yes,
So I think just by sharing your story, Brittany, and sharing what you did in the book and just being so real and so brutally honest in it, I think that you can help others get there because you got there, right? We can't take people where we haven't gone.
exactly.
You went there, right? And that may help other people see, wow, that's what helped her to change. Maybe I need to look at things differently. And that's my hope and prayer in having you on today.
Thank you. I know, me too. if I can do it, anybody can. That's what we
Yes.
all say. It's a,
Amen.
yeah, it's a complete change in thought processes and just the way you see the world. I was just always very negative, and now I'm thankful to
Yes.
live.
Yes.
I feel like I've had a new lease on life, or
Mm.
a second chance.
Amen.
um Anybody can have that. It's never too late.
Amen. Well said.
Thank you.
So you went a little over a year from September of 2017 to December of 2018, really without seeing your kids much, if at all. And they were with a family member. And you said during this time you missed holidays and birthdays, and you can't get those times back. But one of the things that I was thinking about when I read that is that there were probably birthdays and holidays that you missed even though you were present, right? Because you were physically there, but you were mentally checked out. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's, I'm not saying that to condemn you, but that's just reality. I
Oh,
In working with people with life controlling issues, they'll have an excuse like, well, my kid's birthday is next week and I can't miss the party, so I can't go into treatment or whatever. And it's like, it is a sacrifice to miss those times and to be apart from your kids. But in the end, there is a payoff, because now when you're with them, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's very hard to lose that year. But in that year, you were preparing for life back with them, right? You were taking care of yourself, doing what you needed to do to be the mom that they needed.
I knew God had given me that.
Mm.
That was a gift as well. That time for myself.
Right.
Um, yeah, definitely. I knew that. With that, what I say, I've said to people, because I've heard the same excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I can't miss this. I have work. And what I've always thought or said is, well, if you don't get better, you won't have any of that.
Right.
You won't have to worry about work because it'll be gone. You don't have to worry about a birthday party because eventually something's going to happen that's going to separate you from your child.
Yeah.
It'll either be the state or it's going to be your death.
Mm.
So it's
Wow.
like, to miss this one birthday and be able to come back and enjoy many more birthdays in the future, or go to this one birthday and lose all of those birthdays in the future.
Yeah.
Kind of just like I said, addicts, we just need our mind altered. You know what I mean?
Right.
And once you get the drugs and alcohol out of the way, it's easier to do that.
Right.
It's not like it happens overnight, because alcohol is but a symptom, or drugs are a symptom of a lot of deep underlying issues.
Yes.
It's like taking away that is just the first part. And then you really have to, there's a lot of digging deep and being honest with yourself
Right.
after that.
And I really feel like we need God to walk us through that process, right? Because he knows what's really going on in our hearts. He knows what's going on in our minds. And you mentioned kind of shifting the way you think. I mean, that's what happens when we read God's word, when we spend time in prayer. Our minds are transformed, right? And we start thinking the way he thinks. And that's huge. And that takes time. And you mentioned earlier that people with life controlling issues and addictions just want a quick fix. Like, I just want it better now. But we're walking with God in the process. And that's so full of joy, like just being with him and letting him love on us and heal us. And it's definitely a process. It's definitely an interesting path when we take that fork in the road, but it is so incredibly worth it.
Yes.
So you're working on yourself. You go through the 12 steps. You're sober, and it's time for you to go to court. And basically, at this point, you have to fight for custody for your kids. It's not like you just automatically get them back. And you're really praying. You're connecting with God, trying to stay in peace. Tell us a little bit about what happened then.
Yeah, I was sitting in the courtroom. I knew I kept connected to God so much that I knew that the truth was going to come out. I knew that I would get my children back. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. But that particular day, I was sitting in the courtroom and just waiting. They were in a back room, the attorneys and the judge, and they were back there for like 2 hours. And they'd come out and kind of say something to us and then go back in. And I just remember praying and praying and to God. And I asked him, I was like, please just be here with me. Please bring all of my family members who have passed here to just, envelop us in your love and protection. And please, if it's your will, please let my kids come home. And I didn't even have to look. I felt just like this enormous amount of warmth. And just, it was that, that lightness again, that feeling, that just like pure, like just peace and like joy. And I just knew that they were like all behind me. They were all behind me. And we had been fighting for so long for custody that I just thought they were going to give us another court date. It was just the same merry-go-round. And they came out and they told me, they're like, in 2 weeks, this guardianship is done with and your children are coming back home.
Wow.
I was just like, thank God, praise Jesus. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I remember being like, what? I had to ask them again. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on? And they were like, just take it and enjoy it. Because I wanted like explanation, like, how is this possible? And it's possible because God made it possible.
Yes.
It was an amazing experience.
I can't imagine just hearing those words. And then you described what it was like to see your 4 kids and just having them jump all over you and just such unbelievable joy.
It was awesome. It was like no time had passed, and even the counselor said that. I was like, oh, it just seems like you guys haven't even, and I'm like, I know, because I know I may have been a horrible person at times and I was a drunk, and I could be absent, but my kids always knew how much that I loved them.
Yes. You made that very clear. You made that very clear in the book, Brittany, that even when you were in your mess, that you loved your children deeply.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy for you. So tell us just a little bit about what life is like now. I know that you had a strong desire. You've always had a desire to help people. You connected with Adam Vibe Gutton, who is the founder of Recovered on Purpose. He's a recovered addict as well. And I interviewed him on a previous episode of Voices of Recovery. So that's how I was able to connect with you. But talk a little bit about what life is like now that you've got your kids back and you have a mission, you have your book out. Share a little bit about that.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I feel, I don't know, in the process of writing that book, that was very healing as well, because I did not ever sit and write so detailed, like in such detail, a lot of those experiences. So in writing a lot of those, I was able to like absolutely forgive some of those people, that had done that. I looked at it from a different angle. I was like, well, this person was really going through some stuff, and I was able to have compassion and to forgive and to let that go. And this book gave me a lot. Like, it gave me a lot of clarity in my own life. So I feel freer than I have in a long time.
Amen.
I've still been writing. I write poetry, and I am working on another book, and I have some other things in the works too. And I'm just planning on spreading the word and being of service, that's my thing, is being of service to others. Just going on podcasts, like you said, working with Recovered on Purpose. I'm definitely going to be doing that. And I just want to work with anything that has to do with children. Well, that's what Recovered on Purpose is getting to the younger generations,
Prevention.
Prevention, totally all about that, just because I feel like I can relate to girls so much. And if there was a girl ever, I kept that such a secret for so long,
Right.
you know, that I feel like if they can open up and hear my story, they may come up and tell me, even if they haven't told anybody. And that's freeing in it of
Amen.
itself. Um,
Absolutely.
I just want to help women realize that they can get out of abusive relationships, and yeah, really just spreading the word. And I believe God, put me on this earth to help people and to heal people.
Yes.
And that is one of my biggest purposes, I think, on
Yeah.
being in it.
Well,
And
that's one of the things Adam talked about when he was on the show, is that people in recovery need a goal, need a purpose to see past, like, this is where I'm going, and it's just so important. They need that hope. They need to be able to give others hope. And it's an opportunity. I say it all the time, God wastes nothing. He wastes
right,
nothing. So all of the experiences that you went through, everything, that you put in here, like, these things are going to help people. And I just love the prevention piece that is so critical in ending addiction. So
yeah,
kudos to you, Brittany, for doing this, for sharing your story, for being honest and transparent, even though it's not always easy, because we are not proud of some of the things that we did. But I think in sharing those, you're really helping people realize that they're part of the problem, but they're also part of the solution, and that
exactly.
you're giving them power and to partner with God and to lead us out of that darkness. So thank you. And in closing tonight, Brittany, if you could just speak to that mom out there who's really struggling, maybe she's using with her kids around, maybe she's pregnant, she's using. Um, you've been there. Could you speak to that person tonight and encourage her in her journey?
Yeah, I would definitely start off by saying that you are worthy of so much more. Um, Even if you can't see it now, you are worthy of happiness. You are worthy of recovery. You are worthy to spend a life with your children. Um, there, you can do it. There are ways to do it. People just really have got to want to do it for themselves. I would say that you don't have to put yourself through so much pain before you can see the light. um I don't know, it's so hard because I know how it is on the other side,
Right.
and um you're worth it. God loves you. God has always loved you. That is something that kept me sane a lot of the time. Was I was lonely. I was a lonely child, and
Mhm.
I always felt so alone, but I knew that God never, condemned me. Not something I knew. And just pray to God, and just know that He's always with you. There's always people here on earth that can help too. And you
Absolutely.
are not alone. You are not doing this. You are not crazy. You are not demented. You are not alone, because I've been through it, and so many other women have been through it. And there's support out there for you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that, Brittany. And thank you again for coming on the show. I enjoyed your book and I enjoyed talking with you today. So thank you so much. I will post links to Brittany's book, Mommy Drunkest. It is excellent. It's so helpful, and just to see her journey. And Brittany's story is another example that nothing is impossible for God. So I'll put those links, and then you have some social media. I'll be linking that after the show is over. People can check out the Voices of Recovery page if they want to reach out and contact you, and get that support that you talked about, because they're not alone. Amen.
No,
All right. God bless you and those 4 angels, Brittany. And thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I want to thank our audience for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go for encouragement and support on their journey with God. And if you're new to our page, I'd love it if you'd give us a like or a follow so that you don't miss any of this content. And if you feel led, please share this message out because I'm sure there's somebody on your page who needs to hear what Brittany had to say tonight. So again, thank you, Brittany, and thank you everybody for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.